A confidentiality agreement just got shattered on the biggest stage in professional golf, and the name that broke it is the last one you would expect. This is not about one player having a bad week. This is about a system that is supposed to protect every player on that range. And at the 2025 PGA Championship, approximately 50 players had their drivers secretly tested. The results were supposed to stay locked away forever, and exactly one name got leaked. One name got dragged through social media. One name got called a cheater, and everyone else walked away clean. Honestly, I think what happened at Quail Hollow was one of the most unequal applications of a confidential process in modern major championship history, and the fallout is still spreading right now. Did the system fail Rory McIlroy, or did the players around him fail him? Drop it in the comments right now. And if you want the full story of who leaked what, who knew what, and what Xander Schauffele just confessed to, subscribe, because this is only the beginning.
Let's set the scene at Quail Hollow, because the context matters enormously here. It was the week of the 2025 PGA Championship. Rory McIlroy arrived as the reigning Masters champion, the man who had just completed the career Grand Slam at Augusta, the most celebrated moment in golf in a decade. He was supposed to be untouchable, walking into Quail Hollow on the back of everything Augusta gave him. The USGA was invited by the PGA of America to conduct routine driver testing that week. This happens all the time. According to the PGA of America's own statement, the standard process covers about a third of the field at random. At Quail Hollow, approximately 50 players went through it. The test is a CT test, characteristic time, which measures face flexibility. Drivers fail it regularly, not because players are cheating, but because club faces thin out naturally through use. The more you hit the ball and the harder you hit it, the faster it happens. It's called CT creep. It is completely ordinary. The results of these tests are held in strict confidentiality by both the USGA and the PGA of America. That is not a guideline, that is the stated policy. Players are informed privately. They swap out their driver, they move on. Nobody outside the ropes ever needs to know. That is the system as it is designed. That is not what happened at the 2025 PGA Championship. During the second round of play, SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio's Jason Sobel broke the news publicly. Rory McIlroy's tailor-made Q10 Gamer driver had been deemed non-conforming by the USGA on Tuesday, before a single competitive shot was hit. He had already swapped to a backup, he was already playing through it, but the public did not know that. And the moment Sobel's report hit social media, the reaction from golf fans was immediate and ugly. Rory McIlroy cheated, fake Masters champ. Within hours, a story that is supposed to stay inside the ropes permanently, a story that is supposed to be a minor procedural note between a player and his equipment team, had become a global scandal for the most famous golfer in the world. Here is the thing the public did not know at that moment, something that Rory McIlroy knew and was furious about. Scottie Scheffler's driver had also failed on Monday, the world #1. Same week, same process, same result. His name, protected, confidential, invisible. That is where this story starts getting uncomfortable for everyone involved.
Rory McIlroy is the 2025 Masters champion, the man who completed the career Grand Slam, the fifth player in history to win all 4 majors, a journey that took over a decade and broke fans' hearts more times than anyone wants to count. He is not a player who loses composure publicly. He is not someone who throws accusations. He chooses his words. So when McIlroy finally broke his silence at the RBC Canadian Open on June 4, 3 full weeks after the PGA Championship ended, you paid attention to every single word he said. He had refused to speak to the media after each of his 4 rounds at Quail Hollow. Not once, 4 rounds, 0 media sessions, for the reigning Masters champion at a major championship. And on June 4 in Toronto, he explained exactly why. His exact words, "I was a little pissed off because I knew that Scottie's driver had failed on Monday, but my name was the one that was leaked. It was supposed to stay confidential. 2 members of the media were the ones that leaked it." Read that back. The reigning Masters champion, measured and diplomatic in almost every public setting for his entire career, used the phrase "pissed off" in a formal press conference. That is not Rory McIlroy's register. That is a man who has been sitting on something for 3 weeks. He went further. "I didn't want to get up there and say something that I regretted either, because I'm trying to protect Scottie. I don't want to mention his name. I'm trying to protect TaylorMade. I'm trying to protect the USGA, PGA of America, myself. I just didn't want to get up there and say something that I regretted at the time." Absorb the picture McIlroy just painted. The reigning Grand Slam champion at a major championship, saying nothing to the media for 4 straight days, not out of arrogance, not out of contempt, but because he was trying to protect everyone around him while he was the only one getting burned. Imagine winning the Masters. You are riding the biggest high of your professional life. You arrive at the next major. On Tuesday morning, before a single ball is struck, you are quietly told your driver is non-conforming. You swap it out. You say nothing. You trust the process. You trust confidentiality. And then, mid-round on Friday, while you are fighting to make the cut, you find out your name is being broadcast on satellite radio to every golf fan in America, while the world #1 who failed the same test 2 days earlier is playing under a total media blackout. You tell me how you would react.
McIlroy made the cut by a single stroke. He shot 74, 69, 72, 72. He finished tied for 47th. He never contended. The backup Q10 driver gave him only 10 fairways in 28 attempts across the first 2 rounds, a driving accuracy of less than 36.
Now here is where this story takes its most important turn. And I promise you, this is the part nobody has fully connected yet. 3 weeks after the PGA Championship, Xander Schauffele sat down in the interview room at Muirfield Village ahead of the Memorial Tournament. Settled into a swivel chair, comfortable, candid, in the kind of conversational mood that makes him one of the best interviews in professional golf. And in the middle of that session, Schauffele made a confession. Xander Schauffele is the 2024 Open champion, the 2024 Olympic gold medalist, a player who has been through his own driver testing controversy. At the 2019 Open Championship at Royal Portrush, his driver was deemed ineligible by the R&A and he had to scramble for a replacement at the last minute. He is not naive about this process. He knows exactly what it feels like to be on the wrong end of it. He is also not someone who typically causes controversy off the course. Charismatic, direct, but controlled, he does not throw grenades in press rooms. Except this time, sitting in that swivel chair at Muirfield Village, he essentially threw one directly at Scottie Scheffler. His exact words, "I was the one who leaked it," basically, about Scottie's. Let that land. The 2024 Open champion, a player who lived through his own driver testing saga, a player who knows the process is supposed to be confidential, casually, almost cheerfully, admitted in a press conference weeks after a major championship that he was the one who publicly disclosed that Scottie Scheffler's driver had also failed. He framed it charitably. He said it was more a compliment than an accusation. To me, it was more of like a credit to how good he was, you know? I didn't realize I apologized. I was like, sorry, dude, I wasn't trying to have that be a question in your media after you just won another major. He added, it was more about like, this guy just used his backup and absolutely rinsed the field again. Sorry, dude. That is the 2-word apology for disclosing confidential equipment information about the world number 1 at a press conference that was attended by every major golf media outlet in America. Now here is the part nobody is talking about. McIlroy said at the Canadian Open that he refused to speak to media for 4 days because he did not want to accidentally out Scheffler. He was sitting on that information, knowing Scheffler's driver had also failed, and he chose silence specifically to protect him. He said, with Scottie's stuff, that's not my information to share. Meanwhile, the player who ultimately did share it, Schauffele, was doing it weeks later at a completely different event, not under pressure, not in response to a direct question about the PGA Championship, just in the middle of a wide-ranging interview about driver testing in general. McIlroy protected Scheffler's secret for 3 weeks, took the media silence, took the public criticism, took the fake Masters champion tweets, took the 47th place finish narrative, and Xander Schauffele let it out in a press conference at the Memorial Tournament while talking about what it's like to fail a driver test. You are Rory McIlroy. You protected someone's confidential information through 4 rounds of a major championship where you were struggling publicly. You ate the criticism, you said nothing, and then you find out the information got disclosed anyway, by a different player at a different event, 3 weeks later, almost by accident. Tell me that doesn't stay with you. Did Xander Schauffele actually betray Scottie Scheffler here, or was this an innocent disclosure about something that was already half public? And should any of this have ever been confidential in the first place, or should the whole field be tested and all results published? Be honest, drop a below.
But before you conclude that this story is straightforwardly damning for Schauffele, here is where it genuinely gets complicated, and I want to be honest about this. Schauffele's entire position on driver testing is consistent, principled, and has been since 2019. At Royal Portrush, after his own driver controversy, Schauffele went on record demanding transparency. His words then, "What's the fair thing to do? Just test the whole field. It's plain and simple." 6 years later, at Muirfield Village, his position was identical. I would test everyone and make sure I would get everyone's serial number with the driver. Pretty easy. He also spent time at the Memorial deflating the entire scandal narrative around McIlroy's situation. He said driver failures are really normal. He explained the CT creep phenomenon clearly, that hitting a driver thousands of times naturally thins out the face, that players have no idea where the compliance line is because nobody tells them, that it's not like a corked bat. He is not describing cheating, he is describing physics. And on the question of Scheffler's disclosure specifically, Schauffele's framing matters. He wasn't trying to hurt Scheffler. He was trying to make a point about how dominant Scheffler's performance was, that Scheffler won by 5 shots at a major championship using a backup driver he had never fully gamed before. That is genuinely extraordinary. But here is the question nobody in that interview room asked when Schauffele made his confession. Did it matter that the intent was friendly if the effect was identical to the media leak that McIlroy was pissed off about? Does a compliment wrapped around a confidential disclosure make it something different from what McIlroy experienced? Scheffler himself, after winning, had already confirmed his driver situation on Sunday night, so technically, by the time Schauffele brought it up at Memorial, the information was no longer fully protected. Scheffler had answered questions about it in his winner's press conference. But here is what Scheffler actually said in that press conference. I would argue that if we're going to test the drivers, we need to be even more robust in the way we test them. If it's something we're going to take seriously, I feel like we are almost going halfway with it right now. The world number one, fresh off winning his third major championship, used his winner's platform to call out the testing process as inadequate. Not a thank you, not a victory speech, a policy critique. That is a player who has an opinion about how broken this system actually is, and chose the biggest microphone he had all year to say so. Here is why the timing of all of this could not be worse for the USGA and the PGA of America, and I mean that specifically. The US Open at Oakmont is weeks away, and Oakmont is not a friendly venue for uncomfortable storylines. Consider this number: about 50 players had their drivers tested at Quail Hollow. One name leaked publicly during the tournament. One name became a global scandal, while the rest were protected. The testing program that the PGA of America invited the USGA to conduct, the same program that is supposed to operate in total silence, produced the most publicly visible equipment controversy in major championship history, involving a player who had done absolutely nothing wrong. And now Rory McIlroy walks into the US Open as a two-time Masters champion who spent 3 weeks being called a cheater on social media, who refused to speak to media for 4 tournament rounds, who was the subject of a PGA of America statement that explicitly said neither the USGA nor the PGA of America have any concerns about player intent, which is a statement that only needs to exist because the process generated the impression that there might be concern. The USGA has authority over the rules of the game. It designs the US Open. It manages equipment conformance. It is simultaneously the organization that ran the testing program that created the scandal and the organization that will welcome every player on the range at Oakmont. McIlroy, Scheffler, and Schauffele will all tee it up there. The first tee conversation at Oakmont has context now that it did not have before Quail Hollow. The R&A experienced a version of this at Royal Progress in 2019, when Schauffele was the player whose test lead. And Schauffele said then and says now that the solution is testing everyone. The USGA has had 6 years to implement a full field testing protocol. At the 2025 PGA Championship, it still tested approximately 1/3 of the field, and it still didn't prevent a confidential result from becoming a public firestorm. 6 years, same problem, same answer, no change.
Here is what this is actually about. And I want you to sit with this because it goes deeper than one leaked test at one major. The USGA designs equipment standards. It enforces them, it conducts testing, it holds the results in confidence, and then it watches those results become public, not because of a systemic failure, but because the process was never built to survive contact with the modern media environment. Confidentiality works when everyone stays silent, but professional golf in 2025 does not exist in silence. It exists on SiriusXM, it exists on X and Instagram and YouTube within minutes. The moment a test result leaves the room where the testing happened, it has a chance of becoming news. And the USGA has known this for at least 6 years, since Portrush, and has not built a testing protocol that accounts for it. The process was designed for a world that no longer exists. Scheffler called it going halfway. He is right. Either you test everyone and publish every result, so there is no asymmetry, no one player getting burned while another stays protected, or you build a process so airtight that results genuinely cannot leak. Right now, the USGA does neither. It tests 1/3 of the field randomly, holds the results in confidence, and then it expresses surprise when a result escapes. This is not the first time the governing bodies of golf have been behind the curve on a process that affects players directly. The anchored putting ban took years of argument before implementation. The Distance Insights report on the golf ball rollback generated more player pushback than any rule change in a generation. The USGA and the R&A have a consistent pattern of designing policies in rooms that players are not in, and then asking players to absorb the consequences when those policies create problems. This is not about the golf ball. This is not about CT creep. This is about whether the people who govern equipment standards understand the difference between running a confidential process and creating the appearance of a confidential process. One protects players, the other protects the organization, until it doesn't. Right now, Rory McIlroy spent 3 weeks being protected by no one except himself, and he had to skip 4 media sessions at a major championship to do it. Is the USGA's driver testing process genuinely protecting players, or is it creating unequal exposure that punishes some and protects others based entirely on which name leaks first? And does it matter that the intent is good if the outcome keeps being this bad? Drop your answer right now. Here is what happens next, and this is the moment that will determine everything. Rory McIlroy, Scottie Scheffler, and Xander Schauffele all walk into Oakmont on the US Open. The US Open is run by the USGA, the same organization that conducted the testing at Quail Hollow, the same organization that has not publicly explained why one player's tests stayed confidential and another's did not, the same organization that Scheffler said is going halfway with his own process.
Every one of those 3 players will be on the range at Oakmont with a driver in their hands. Every one of those 3 players now has a public opinion about how testing should work. Scheffler wants a more robust system. Schauffele wants the whole field tested. McIlroy was furious enough about what happened that he broke his silence 3 weeks later and used the word pissed off in a formal press conference. And Xander Schauffele, who started this whole second wave by confessing he leaked Scheffler's test at Memorial while framing it as a compliment, will say, "Sorry, dude," and move forward. Whether Scheffler actually accepted that apology, we do not know. He has not said publicly, which is either grace or restraint or something else entirely. The final verdict here is simple. 3 of the top 4 players in the world were all caught in the same confidential process. 1 paid for it publicly, 1 was protected, and 1 casually blew the protection in a press conference weeks later while trying to pay the first a compliment. This system failed everyone, and the USGA walks into Oakmont as the host. If you want the full breakdown of what happens between these 3 players at the US Open, and whether the USGA addresses any of this before the first tee, subscribe, because the loudest responses to this story haven't been given yet, and this story is not over.